All right, hi everyone. So first off, I'd like to thank Straddling for sponsoring the Lunch and Learn series and for their overall support of UCI Applied Innovation. Today's Lunch and Learn speaker is Ken Hubbard. Ken is the CEO of Capstack West, a business capital community for both debt and equity that engages over 25,000 investors and 250,000 C-suite executives looking for capital. Prior to Capstack West, he was active in investing and supporting innovative companies, including Meridian AR, Speed Brackets, California Cardiac Solutions, and GoGo Car. Mr. Hubbard has built an angel investor network with over 700 active investors and has trained over 1,000 CEOs on pitching investors in the past 7 years. Capstack West is a strategic partner to one of our Cove community residents, Executive Next Practices Institute. Ken is here today to talk about what investors want from an investor pitch. Welcome, Ken.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Happy days. Thanks for turning on the mic. So I want to get started with just a couple of quick questions. How many people in here have tried to raise money? 1, 2, 3, 4,000 of you, all of you. So raising money, is it easy? That's the nervous laughter we all know. It actually can be easy, and it's much more mechanical than we think. And a lot of times what we're doing is we're pitching the investor from the company perspective, that wonderful, exciting thing that we created. But the reality is we should be pitching it from the investor perspective, so they grasp everything very, very quickly. So when you think about what an investor is really looking for, think about how they want to hear information. So it's all about the message for you guys. I've raised money, my first company was 1988. I sat on a living room floor raising money for a ski product company. I had no idea what I was doing. People gave me money, I built the company, sold the product to REI, and life was great. But it was the messaging that I got right, I just didn't know it at the time. So if your messaging takes you more than 15 to 30 seconds to explain what you do, then you've already lost. You really need to be able to explain very quickly, and sometimes it's best to just paint a picture. Make it simple for them to understand. We're the FedEx of online distribution. We're the wine company for sports drinks. Whatever you have to do to paint that picture as quickly as possible. Because if you can't do that, it doesn't matter what the rest of the slides say. It's going to take them months to get to know you, and it's going to take time for them to finally figure out that you're a good investment. If you're a more seasoned veteran at pitching, then a lot of you know that you need to tighten down your messaging sharper and sharper until finally you see in the investor's eyes that connection that happens within the first minute. And then a lot of people don't really realize what they're selling. When you're pitching, you're selling. You're selling your company to them, and they give you money for that stock. If you don't realize what you're selling, they don't realize what they're supposed to buy. So believe it or not, your messaging on what you're selling is important. We have a company, it does this, we're raising this, and here's why you're here. So make it very clear. And then my favorite little tiny mistake that almost every CEO makes is they think that if they give a range of dollars, that an investor is going to say, wow, I'll pick the high one or the low one, or the middle. No, the investor goes, well, what do you really need? Inside his head, he's like, huh? Pick a number, stay true to the number, and as you move through the process, if they like the deal, they might negotiate with you. If they don't like the deal, you'll know exactly what happens there, and I'll tell you a little more about that. But if they like the deal, they'll work through the numbers. So let's say you're raising $1 million. In that $1 million, you're going, you know, we've got 80% of that is for marketing and sales, blah, 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 blah. The investor is from the marketing and sales industry. He says, that's not enough. I think you need more. Give me some advice, Mr. Investor, as to why you think I need more, because he may not have heard everything that you told him. Believe me, just like anyone else, an investor only hears 5% of everything you say. And you may think that they're tuned in, but what's going on back here is, oh, I got a meeting in a half an hour, my wife told me to go get the milk, oh my gosh, I can't believe my kid's going to college, I got to pay for that. All that's happening in his mind, but you don't see it. So if you're not getting across simple points, and he remembers 5% and it's the wrong 5%, then you have a disconnect. So how much do you need is a very important single number, not a range of numbers. Make it easy for them to swallow. Next, training. I know this sounds insane, but train yourself to think like an investor. How does an investor think? What's an investor really there for? They're there to put their money in. Okay? So there's two things that drive an investor. And I didn't make these up. I want to thank Warren Buffett. He came up with these, and it's exactly right. So you have the fear of loss and the excitement of gain. So the excitement of gain, I want to make money from your company. But the fear of loss is, it took me 40 years to get that money in my bank account, and I'm scared to death that you are going to blow it, and I'm going to sit there and go, what the heck happened? So when you're dealing with your slide deck, mitigate risk. All the way through, you have to build confidence. So if you put, let's say you put something on slide 3 that says that my team, these guys are brilliant. They can change the world. Look what they did at IBM. Look what they did over here at Target. And let's say the IBM guy is a hardware salesman from IBM that sold $120 million worth of hardware. But you're a SaaS company, an online software as a service company. I'm an investor. I go, hardware sales guy. They're a SaaS company. Disconnect. However, if I'm a smart CEO, I go, well, you know what? What he did really well, he built relationships with Tier 1 Fortune 500 companies. If he can build a relationship with those complicated guys, our market's going to be easy for him. So the way that you write it is that he has relationships with Tier 1 or Fortune 500. So try to keep everything lined up for your company to mitigate risk for that investor. So those two first areas are very important. Now the next thing is, how do investors talk? They talk in two basic subjects. I call them languages. They talk in dollars and cents, and they talk in percentages. Well, if you want to capture somebody's attention very quickly, those are the two things to talk about. So think about this. If any of you have 401ks or anything like that, and you get that statement once a month, and you look at that statement, do you go, let me read that 4-page disclaimer and all the information about this program I'm in? Or do you go, how much did I make? Was that up or down in percentage? Ha ha, I have money. So they think the same way. And until you have a relationship with them, they're going to default to the easy, lowest hanging fruit of dollars and cents and percentages. How many of you have ever sat with an investor and the investor says, well, you know, how much of the market you going to get? You know, what does that mean in revenue? How are you going to get your company out there? How are you going to target that sector? All of that's percentage answers and dollar answers. So if you make it easy for them to pick up your information, they connect faster. If they connect faster, you have a better chance of getting a home run. Next thing is, and this happens a lot, there's two types of languages when you're working in an investor relationship. There's the company language and the investor language. The company language, an example is, we have the greatest, coolest product in the world. You're not going to believe how well it's going to work. Holy cow, we have people that really want to try it out. We got to get this thing built tomorrow. And the investor language is, how does it work? how are you going to do this? What's the process? How do I fit in? How do I make money? They don't care as much about the product or service as they do about how the whole company looks. So I don't know if any of you have ever heard an investor say, well, you know, I really want to invest in you. You're the reason I'm going to put money in. Okay, so what does that mean to me? So you don't really need the rest of my team. Why don't you just buy me and I'll go work for you? So it's really not what the investor meant. What the investor meant was, what you have built, I get, and because you built it, I want you to be the leader. And I'm going to put that trust in you. That's how they think. When I invest in a company, if it's an early stage company, I get to know the CEO and the upper management. I do it through a friendly relationship, not adversarial. Most investors use a friendly relationship. They want to know more and more and more about you because they're trying to make a decision on something that's never been done. However, in a more seasoned company, I can look at the numbers. And I can see 3 years that this CEO, he did a phenomenal job. So I'm in. I don't have to really sit down with him. That's why the stock market works. So next, you have to talk valuations. How many of you have presented your company and spoken about valuations to an investor? Okay? How much fun was that? It seems like it shouldn't be fun because now you're playing games. Valuation is art. It is not necessarily science, but we investors have rules of thumb. For example, we see a company that's just getting off the ground. They may have 0 sales, maybe a little software, some good ideas, some good people. Maybe they filed for IP, maybe they haven't. Realistically, that's about $1.5 million valuation in our minds. It's your job to prove that it's more, if you want to. Or you take the money. Always take the money. Stock is a tool. Learn how to manage the stock and the valuation of your company. I had to do a down round one time with a company. I picked a really good time to start a company. It was the end of 2007. There was no stock market anymore. It was the most difficult time I've ever had raising money, and I raised $3.2 million. And what I had to do is I had to go into these down round discussions and keep from doing a down round. Talk about a trick. So I had to use sweeteners, warrant sweeteners, options, same thing, so that I could push the value up for that big investor that wanted to come in, so I could keep the other investors happy so they didn't get scared. And it worked. Didn't do a down round, everybody was happy, we had a home run. But you have to be able to talk valuation. If you don't know how to talk valuation, find a place where you can learn online. There's a lot of different videos and things like that. I would study 3 or 4 of them because everybody's got a different take on them. I'm practical. Some guys have a more robust storyline to it. But when you're doing your valuations, find the model that works and remember to listen. So I've been with CEOs that put out a valuation. And I go, well, how did you come to that? And they give me a big story. Now, it's a big story. There's no company there yet. So what I do is I say, okay, well, that's a great story. Do you have any movement on that? Is that valuation stuck in stone? And I've had CEOs go, well, yeah, we're sure we're valued there. I said, oh, that's great. I'll call you back. Did that guy's phone ring? No, phone didn't ring. So the point being is, be flexible. Use valuation. Understand that your stock is a tool. And use the stock correctly. You can do all types of things with warrants, your option pool. You can move all these things around as you need them, but first you have to set them up. So the law says, first you have to have a company. You have to get all the paperwork done. Be sure that you have done your resolutions and everything for setting up the board, everything. Now you can sell a share of stock. Well, if you remember all those things and you go through it correctly, you're going to talk just like an investor. You know what? We have 60 million shares of common, 40 million shares of preferred. Right now, we're doing a convertible note, 20% discount, 7% interest, valuation ceiling of $7 million. When we go out for the A, we'll close that and convert everything over. We think the A is going to bring us $12 million, so you're going to get a double discount there. That's a pretty good deal. As you talk like that, you're sounding like the investor, and he's going, hey, I'm comfortable with you because you sound like me. So always talk like the investor. And when somebody says, and this is a critical moment, when somebody says, what's your exit plan? How many in here have an exit plan for the company? How many have an exit plan for the investor you're bringing in? Many times different. So your exit plan for your company might be, well, you know, if this thing gets going, I'm going to ride it for 10 years. And the investor's going, well, you know, I'm not going to stick around for 10 years. I'm 78. This is no fun. You have to think a little bit different. What I recommend is a 3 to 5 year exit plan if you're starting off. If you're a little more seasoned, a little further along, you might have a 2 or 3 year exit plan. Don't make it too short. Nobody believes that, unless you can back it up with an acquisition discussion, NDA. Always, though, have an exit plan for the investor. They're not necessarily asking about your exit plan for you. They want to know about them. So an investor, you might say, gosh, you know, this is a lifestyle company for me. Never say that out loud. And you're talking to this investor and you go, you know, what we'd like to do is we'd like to buy you out at some point within the 3rd to 5th year at the valuation at that time. And we might even look at giving you a little 5% bonus. He gets it. He doesn't care if you get out of the company. He cares that he can get out of the company. Okay? So learn how to talk like an investor. That is a risk mitigator. They hear your voice. You sound like them. They love the deal. Next, know your deck. I have listened to people pitch me for close to 20 years. I have met 5 to 6 that actually pitch me like they know their deck. Because CEOs are busy. I've run companies, I got so busy I didn't know where my head was. And then all of a sudden, I've got to go pitch a guy. CFO calls you up and says, hey, listen, I finally got this guy on the phone, pitch him. Like, holy cow. Well, what I would do is I'd take my deck out once a week, and I would look at that deck, and I would remember the salient points. Because some days I had to pitch at a cocktail party in 5 minutes. And by the way, when you pitch at a cocktail party, it's the softest pitch you'll ever throw. For example, you're talking to somebody, first thing you say to an investor, you know, what do you do, who are you, what's your background, blah, blah, blah. Ah, investor. They turn around, what do you do? And now very gently, I do this. Its value is this. Is that something that you find interesting? And you say these nice, soft relationship. And then the next comment, you know, that sounds pretty cool. Well, here's the value proposition. Here's how we make money. And it's a little tiny 5-minute pitch. I raise more money at cocktail parties than I did on golf courses, which probably speaks to how bad I play golf. Yes, sir.
Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on that part of its value is this?
So you've got your brand statement. You've got the value to the market. What is it? Why did you build it? Are you replacing something? Is there quality there? Now the value to the investor, but you hide that gently by saying, and our margins are extremely high, blah, 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 blah. Because as you guys know, every market, investor, customer, partner, channels, whatever, they all have a different message that ties to that one brand that you have. So you have to be able to deliver that. How many of you have pitched in a coffee shop? I think Starbucks would be closed right now if they didn't allow pitches. I have sat through probably 1,000 just a couple of Starbucks. Same thing goes there, except it's noisy. So what do? The investor sitting in front of you, you have to get your points across. And you can hear everybody talking. He can hear everybody talking. You're not even sure he wants to be there. So what do? Push out a question or a comment and get him to approve that he heard it and understands it. A lot of times what's going on in an investor's mind is they hear a little bit of what you said. It's a noisy room. So you need to get the point across, and you're not really sure how you're going to do that because the guy doesn't look like he's connecting. And so finally, you have to gently ask. And what I always say to people, I say, does that make sense? Do you see how we do that? And I get them to think instead of sit and listen. Because sitting and listening, frankly, means that they're not really connected. I've actually had an investor sit in front of me and give me my pitch. As I clicked on a slide, he goes, oh yeah, that's exactly what we believe. Okay, sure, how's this slide? How's this slide? I raced through it in 5 minutes. Happiest guy I've ever seen. So very, very important in a coffee shop with all this noise to be sure that they're connecting with you verbally. Don't just let them sit there and you pitch. And that's a very, very big mistake, and investors hate it when you sit and you throw up on them. It happens all the time to me. I gently have to stop a CEO and say, okay. I got to clean myself up. You just threw everything you had at me. So remember, you're doing everything in sound bites. Investors want to hear sound bites. As they get to know you, by the way, they'll sit down with you, they'll connect with you, they'll enjoy the relationship. Never get too close to an investor until you have an exit. Then they trust you and love you. But otherwise, they're an investor. When you're in a group events are very difficult for a couple of reasons. One, you don't really know what's going on in the audience. People start out and they're playing on their phones and things like that. And when they finally settle down, you're starting to engage them. They want to hear, by the way, a very simple message again. And you want to get that message out easily. And you want to get it. If you could pitch in 2 to 3 minutes, investors love that. If you pitch in 10 to 20 minutes, the only ones who love it are the engineer investors. If you pitch in 45 minutes, only the ones who have narcolepsy and want to go to sleep during your pitch love your pitch. So be careful, because really, if you can't get your information out in 5 minutes and then elaborate later, that your messaging's bad. And when you're in a group, the last piece of the puzzle that gets everybody in trouble is the Q&A. When you do Q&A, sound bites, short statements, get it over with. Go to the next question. Done. In a group setting, though, you can have somebody accidentally say something that they think sounds good, but it just crushed your company. Simple statements like, well, I don't really believe your numbers. What do you do with that one? You can take a couple of sound bites and walk through, you know what? I think our numbers hold up quite well. And if you'd like, I can take a minute now, or we can sit down and go deep into them. Be more than happy to do that for you. So the Q&A can be damaging. The investor is not always trying to stab you, but sometimes they say something in a group setting that comes out wrong. I've watched CEOs disappear on the stage. I had a CEO, very, very powerful gentleman, beautiful slide deck to a point, except when he came to the financials of the company. Up come the financials, blah, 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 blah. One guy in the back of the room just had a question. It wasn't anything big, and he goes, I come out of the accounting industry, and I had a question for you on the 4th year about the 15th line down. See that number right there, that 42,387,000? Holy cow, the CEO turns around, and now he's got to find that silly number. And he starts looking for it, and his CFO stands up and says, it's right over there. 2 seconds later, no more questions were asked. The guy was off the stage. He got 0. So be sure when you're in a group that you try to control yourself a little bit, lightweight information. And finally, an email. How many of you have sent an email to an investor? Yep, everybody does it. Nobody wants to talk about it. I get these emails, I get these LinkedIn in-mails that are so long that I get through about the third or fourth sentence and I still have no idea what they're talking about. And finally, I get closer to the bottom and I'm like, you know, I'll talk to him because I can't figure out what he does. And I'm only doing that because maybe I missed something. But when you send an email out, bullet points, lightweight, simple information, or see deck attached, if you need more information, reach out to me, please. I'd be happy to explain. Very simple, because an investor, on average, sees between 1 and 5 companies a week. And they have short attention spans because they're getting bombarded. So if your content, your information isn't simple and easy for them to understand and it answers their questions, then you fail. How soon after pitching someone should you send out an email? I love it when I pitch someone and as I'm pulling my phone out and walking away, I hear bing. Dude, just tell me what you're going to tell me. Wait. Give yourself a little time to think. Calm down. Rehearse in your mind what you heard and didn't hear. At the end of that day, if the meeting was up until 3 o'clock, then at the end of the day, send out a nice note. And answer their questions. Because if you send me an email and it didn't answer the questions that I had when I sat across from you, then I know you weren't listening. So I know if I ever give you advice, it's going to go nowhere. So always focus on what they're saying. Listening is the most powerful thing you can do in that particular subject. So take a second and think that through. How do we make money? About 80% of the pitch decks I see have financials. But when I ask a CEO how he makes money, he couldn't answer that. He has what I call stream of thought coming out of his mouth. That's where you're thinking and talking and you don't realize you just said 10,000 words to a guy who just wanted one word. So get into your mind before you meet with an executive or an investor or anybody. How do we make money? Because that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, I get that. It's cool. But how do you make money? So you may, for example, have a product company, okay? And your product company, you sell products. Makes sense. Well, but you found this new niche idea where you box up products and now you sell a monthly subscription, which has become a very big deal. My wife knows, and now I know. She gets 2 or 3 boxes a month, looks at the clothes, looks at the items, picks what she wants, boom. She still buys the same products. But if I had to sit in front of that CEO and listen to him tell me how he makes money, he wouldn't be saying, hey, we sell a dress. He would say, we ship products to the home for the consumer to make choices. So we make money on the subscription. If they keep it all, we get all that money. If it's an upsale, it comes out of the box. And I need to know that. I need to know, you know, how the money works. And don't ever think for 1 second that how you started your company is exactly how it's going to end up. I would say probably 95% of the companies I've ever met have pivoted. And don't be afraid of the pivot. The pivot is part of the process of learning. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It has to do with market and other drivers. So if you have to pivot, just get it over with as quickly as possible. Don't wait. Don't sit there and get nervous. Figure out how you're going to do it. The other thing that I want to hear is I want to hear how the customer gets money to you. So if the customer is an online customer, do they have to go back in and buy from you on a regular basis? So are they going to be a member where you've kept their information and now they just one button buy? Or do they have to resubscribe, or is it an ongoing subscription, or is it a one-time? So for example, there are a lot of companies out there that need money. You can tell because they say, pay the entire year up front. Okay, why can't I just pay monthly? So then they entice you. They give you a discount off the monthly, so you pay 1 year up front. Not a bad deal now, if you're going to use that. So know how your customer moves the money to you. It helps the investor understand that you know the processes. If it pivots, it pivots. But know it from the get-go. Okay? So now you've got this investor so excited about you. They really want to do the deal with you. They like everything. Now they want to know what they get. By the way, if you don't have to talk about the money at the beginning, that's great, because you can build value in your pitch deck. But if you have to spit that number out, spit it out. Now they're going to compare. But you want to build value, so put the number later. So now you've got to talk about the details, and that's what they want to know. How do I make money? What do I get? Know these facts. Don't ever pitch your company without knowing how they make money, because I guarantee you they'll run circles around you or they'll walk away. It's like you get to this point in a pitch deck and the investor says, oh, okay, tell me about this deal. And they go, well, you know, we're raising maybe, 2 million, 2.5 million. We could use 3 though, and we're selling stock, but we can do a convertible note for you because you're a great guy, and everything's convoluted. And then all of a sudden at the end of the pitch, the investor goes, well, this really isn't my space. So, I appreciate your time today, but I can't invest in this. He just wanted to walk away because you didn't have your facts together and you didn't mitigate his risk and make him feel really confident that this was a good deal. Make him feel confident that it's a good deal. Be sure you know how the numbers work. And what I always tell every CEO is understand both directions of how the numbers work. From the investor standpoint, what do I get? What's that value? Why am I putting money into a company that's early stage or later stage? What is it that I am supposed to be taking home with me? Anything or nothing? What do I have to sign? There's probably not a CEO I've ever met in my life that can tell me what the documents are that I have to sign. Nowadays, instead of getting a stack of documents, you get the electronic. Read, tap, really difficult to make a deal. But in the old days, you get a bunch of yellow stickies or little things on a bunch of documents, and you have 10 different signatures. There are only 3 or 4 documents that you should be signing. Know what your documents are. Make the investor feel very confident you are that smart. You took the time. CEO, by the way, running the company, that's the fun stuff. Raising the money, not so fun sometimes. But if you know how the mechanics of it work, it's much easier. So the whole process of working with an investor is mechanical. They want to know that you know. They want to know how the deals work. They want it all very simple. Your numbers will go up. I took an angel group from investing in 5% of their companies to investing in 30+% of the companies that came through the door. Why? Because I helped the CEOs package their company simply and deliver the message over and over again. Everybody thought I was a wizard. No, it's mechanical. You have a higher success rate by getting the information across in a very succinct manner. You need to understand why the deal is good for the investor and speak to that, because sometimes they don't light up. They don't quite see it. So a convertible note, hey, you've got a discount rate, 20%, that's great because here's what the shares can do. You have an interest rate, you can have that interest flip right into shares too, which is what most people do. But if you want the interest, we can pay you the interest. And we think our next round is going to be above this ceiling price that we put here. So you're going to get that upside too. It's a couple of greed button pushes here and there, doesn't hurt. And that gets them thinking, hey, this is a good deal, and you know why it's a good deal for me. And the other piece of that really good deal for me, when I invest as an angel investor and I put money into a company, normally I'm putting it in at around 25 to 50, 60 cents a share. And then the CEO's telling me, well, when we exit, that's a 5 multiple. And I have to look at him and say, well, isn't that a 5 multiple on their revenue at time of exit, whether it's gross revenue or net? Yeah. I say then my multiple could easily be 50. And he goes, oh yeah. Learn how that works. Be able to speak it. It makes investors feel like you really have your act together. If you make it too complicated, they walk away. And some of the products and things in here that you guys have developed are complicated. I get it. But you've got to simplify that message so that they can grab hold of it, own it, and invest in it. That means you have to work a little harder. If you have somebody in marketing, work with them. If you have other businessmen, advisors, work with them. Get your message so tight that when you talk to a 10-year-old kid or a grandmother, they know what you do. Because an investor is hearing a bunch of these. And you have to be quick. Finally, follow-up. We've talked a little bit about that. But I want to talk about the shiny penny problem. You guys are probably all aware that an investor sees 10, 15, 20 deals, sometimes more than that a month. And there's another thing that happens. They read 50 articles, 200 articles, and all of a sudden, your cool SaaS play has been shelved in their mind to go with AI, Bitcoin, something fun. You need to follow up consistently with them until they say no. You have to do it. And if they don't get back to you, don't feel like it's the end of the world. It just may not have fit them. And it's okay. If you talk to an investor, if somebody calls me up and says, you know, Ken, I was wondering, what did you think about the deal? And I might say to him, well, you know, I'm not sure if I totally get it. It may not be the deal for me. Then I've opened that door for them, and they can take a couple of seconds to say, would you like me to re-examine or re-explain something to you? Maybe you have a couple of questions. If I don't, the door is closed. Don't try to ram them. Because for every investor you meet, if you're a nice guy, remember, one investor has 20 friends that are investing. Everybody you meet knows somebody who invests. So don't ruin that relationship because you're frustrated. And by the way, if you don't take money from them, let's say they offer you money, and you go, wow, this is great, but you find out later maybe they're not a great investor for you for whatever reason. Maybe they're too hard on you or whatever. Just gently say, thank you very much. I think we're good right now. Because at some point, that person has other investors too, and he tells a story at a cocktail party, and a guy looks it up online, boom, you get a phone call from a guy you don't know. Where'd you find out about us? Oh, I don't know. Which happens all the time. So always, always keep a friendly relationship with them. Now, one of the things about due diligence that most CEOs don't put time into is that due diligence should match your pitch deck and your executive summary. Now, in the old days, less than 10 years ago, you used to do a business plan. Whew, man, I read more of those than I care to mention. They're always brutal. Nowadays, pitch deck, executive summary, whatever you're doing. Financials, of course. But everything needs to match what you said in the deck. So if, for example, I'm listening to you pitch me, and I see that you say you're going to do $30 million in year 3 because you have these 2 channel partners already, and then I get to due diligence and I don't find any documents on 2 channel partners, I have 2 options. Ask, or just consider the guy lied to me. The whole point is match it. So in your slide deck, which shouldn't be more than about 12, 13 slides, look at the slide, match the diligence. Be sure everything is the same. When you don't, you fail. And the other thing is, tell your executives in the company to know the due diligence and know how to match everything up, because I guarantee you there's a CFO out there that says, well, you know, Bob's right about, you know, we could do 25 million that year, but, you know, I think it's going to be more like 10. Boom. Explosion right there. You can see the mushroom cloud happening. It hurts a lot when your executives are not on the same page. So be sure that they are. And then one of my favorite problems that comes up when you're close to getting an investor to want to do business with you is they always come up and say, you know, my friend's in your space. You could call that the kiss of death. You don't know the guy. The investor only heard 5% of what you said. He's going to go deliver the message to the guy. Man, I'm done. This guy's gone. However, what I recommend is you load the investor with a soundbite, with your messaging. You go right back. Anytime they say that, you go right back to your story. Here's the message I gave you. Here's what I think he will like to hear. And take that with him. If you need to send him an email with the bullet points. So he can forward the bullet points to his guy. Because does anybody remember the silly kids game telephone? If I start telephone here and I tell him something, by the time it gets over here, it's going to be ugly. Same thing happens with investors. So what's going on in his mind is, hey, I see this cool deal. So when he looks at his buddy and says, hey, you know what, I saw this cool deal. What do? I don't know. They're in blockchain, I think. No, the company uses blockchain to get contracts signed. So now the guy goes, I don't know anything about blockchain. Boo, gone. So load them. Be sure you do that. And finally, be consistent on your follow-up. Be sure that you're getting your message across every time. If you have to repeat your message 2 times or 3 times in the same deck, do it. Because they may not have heard it the first 1 or 2 times. Okay? So with that, I'd be happy to open it up for a couple of questions. Thank you all. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the due diligence should match the pitch deck and the executive summary. Can you just sort of elaborate on due diligence?
Sure. Okay, so he's asking about due diligence and matching to the deck. So in your deck, if you're saying that the market is 42 million people in the US, you need to have a document off the web or a link in your due diligence that says, this is where I got this information. If you say that you have LOIs for 450 units at 100,000 apiece, I better see those LOIs in there. And they better match what you told me. If you tell me that you've got a channel relationship with a big investment house that's going to help you, I better see a document or an email that says, yes, we are your channel partner, and here's how we're going to work. And remember, with channel partners, it's, in the investor's eyes, a crapshoot with the channel partner. Because training that channel partner can be very slow and difficult. But you can mitigate the risk by showing me you figured out the training model. And then knowing that that channel partner maybe has an 80-20 rule. 80% of the sales are done by 20% of the people. So you need to understand that you're going to have to model that too. So your due diligence needs to match everything that you're telling me during that pitch deck. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. When someone talks to you, how comfortable are you being qualified by them? In other words, how many deals have you done recently? What kind of investments do you typically make? Do you like to do only one investment? Do you like to have an opportunity for more than one round?
That's a home run, and you should always do it. The other day, one of my companies that I put some money into, they needed my help on the phone with a big investor. Of course, I was slightly hungover at 8 o'clock in the morning when the call went off. So I let the CEO kind of do his thing and get me introduced to the investor, and I listened to the storyline and everything, and you could kind of see that the investor is wondering, you know, when am I going to pipe in? So after about 20 minutes of chit-chat, and I offered a couple of statements, finally I said, you know, this sounds kind of interesting. I like what I hear. Tell me about your company. Why do you invest? How do you invest? What kind of dollars do you do? How often? Is this something that fits? Why doesn't it fit? Why does it fit? In 5 minutes of just those questions, the investor says to the CEO, I like him. I like this deal. I talked like the investor. I asked him the hard questions. He gave me the answers. The CEO was like, whoa, I can't believe you did that. I said, yeah. You know, they have to stand up and put up, and it's okay if they don't, but you got to know who you're playing with. There's more power in asking the right question than giving the right answer. Ask the questions. There's a nice way to ask every question. You just have to take a couple seconds to do it. Anything else? All right. Yes, ma'am.
You meet all these investors across many months. How would you say you follow up with several of them at the same time? Like, what updates should you give about your company so you keep them engaged? They might say no right now, but just to keep them abreast.
Did you all catch that? She's asking, you know, if you have a bunch of investors and you want to keep them abreast of what you're doing because they may not be ready for you, something that I think is very important is every investor has a portfolio, and if they're not liquid, they might string you out a little bit because they like the deal. And they're not doing that to be mean, but they want to keep an eye on what's going on, and if some of their assets break loose, we call it dry powder, then they can go ahead and invest. So you might have 4 or 5 of them, and how often do you send something out to them to remind them? Once a month. Once a month. If you're sending it out twice, 3 times a month, I guarantee you it's, oh, click, trash, trash. Once a month, give them a very concise, small update. I call it a teaser update because all you're giving them is a little bit of information so they have questions. They get enough, they go, huh, interesting. Hey, glad to see things are going great. And they answer you, that means they're staying engaged. When they have some money available, or when they find a buddy who likes that type of space, boom, they put some money in. All right, is that it? Thank you all very much.